All right, good evening, and thank you all for joining us today for this webinar, which is hosted and arranged by SPJ New England chapter, um, as well as Adam Sannett. Shout out to him. He is not here with us today, but I wanted to give a special shout out for him to helping arrange this with Region 7. I am the regional coordinator for Region 7. I'll be moderating today as we take a little journey and learn a little bit about some different projects here with the Reynolds Journalism Institute. We're joined by a group of fellows here today who have been tirelessly working very hard on each of their presentations that they will be providing us here with a little bit of an insight, kind of some sneak peek into what each of their projects entail. So we'll be talking a little bit about algorithmic literacy for journalists. We'll be talking about data sonification and just constructive engagement in online comment platforms. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Andy Lee Roth. He can tell us a little bit about the program itself, and then let you go ahead and take it away if that's all right.
Thanks so much, Loretta. It's a pleasure to join you, and thanks for hosting this kind of sneak peek of a small handful of Reynolds Journalism Institute fellow projects for 24-25. So before I start telling you about the project I'm working on, I want to give a shout out to some of our fellows who aren't here now, but whose work is equally interesting, and also a shout out to an advance notice that what we're doing today is kind of a sneak peek of projects in progress. But on March 7th, the Reynolds Journalism Institute will host the official launch of each of the resources you're going to learn about today, plus these additional ones that I'll tell you briefly about now. So if you want to mark your calendar for March 7th at what would be, I believe, 11 a.m. Central Time, and keep an eye out on the Reynolds Journalism Institute website, there'll be an announcement about this launch event. So some of the projects, there are 4 other projects that aren't represented today, but that we want you to know about. From the Prism Photo Workshop, Michelle Kanar and Elisa Shukar are working on a resource for local newsrooms that are interested in using visuals to promote engagement, and the special focus of Michelle and Alyssa's project is, or a special focus of Michelle and Alyssa's project is how local newsrooms can work practically, ethically, effectively with freelance photographers to create content, to create visual content. So that's one project. Catherine Reynolds Lewis is working on a quick start guide for freelancing, to freelancing for independent journalists. Alex Partita, who's with the Salt Lake City Tribune, is working on a resource about article as homepage, which is an intriguing concept, I think. So developing pathways for so that articles act like homepages used to and connect people not just to the content of that specific article, but to a host of other things at the news outlet. And finally, from the 2024-25 RJI Fellow projects, not represented today, but again, that will become available as resources on March 7th. Kate Myers is working on a project on sustainability and strategic operations for independent newsrooms. So there's all kinds of innovation going on, some of which you'll hear more about here today, and all of which will be on offer, again, if you mark your calendars for March 7th, which is a Friday, at what will be 11 a.m. Central Time. And so with that said, let me tell you a little bit about algorithmic literacy for journalists, which is the project I've been developing since July under the auspices of this RJI Fellowship. The premise of the project is that algorithms and AI more generally are reshaping almost every aspect of news, from production to distribution to how it's consumed. And as a consequence, news workers of all sorts, regardless of their specialty, regardless of their kind of area, whether they're journalists or editors or in other roles, need some degree of algorithmic literacy. The challenge, of course, is that time is precious. Not everyone's a computer scientist. And there's a huge and growing literature in both the press and also in scholarly studies about AI, so that it's almost impossible to kind of keep up with unless you treat it as a full-time job. So, kind of guided by the spirit of the RJI fellowships, which are all intended to be practical and immediately useful, I proposed to develop this toolkit to promote algorithmic literacy for journalists. And I'm using journalists kind of widely there to include all kinds of news workers. Um, the guide that I'm developing is going to take the form of a website, and I'll share my screen with you now. I'm not very good at multitasking, so I'll pause speaking for a moment and share my screen with you. Um, and I'll just maybe guide you around a little bit of this site by way of introducing it. There are two key areas that the algorithmic literacy for journalists resource addresses. One is what's called algorithmic accountability reporting. This is journalism that informs the public about the risks and benefits of AI tech development, while also holding the tech developers and managers to account. So that idea of algorithmic accountability reporting originates with the work of a computer scientist at Northwestern University named Nick Diakopoulos. And I'm using that term somewhat more generally than he does in his 2019 book, Automating the News. But the basic idea is that we can harness the watchdog role, the traditional watchdog role of journalism to report on and hold, to report on AI tech developments and to hold developers and managers of those AI tech accountable for developing and implementing them in ways that benefit the public rather than exclusive political or economic interests. So the first area is that algorithmic accountability. The second area of my project is responding to what I'm calling algorithmic gatekeeping. And gatekeeping is the idea that, in the 1950s, there were famous sociological studies of newspaper editors as, quote, gatekeepers, who decided what stories got through the gate and into a publication and what stories were blocked or barred at the door and not allowed in. Well, if you fast forward, 60 or 70 years, the new gatekeepers now are not necessarily human editors at, say, in a newsroom, but are increasingly these big tech algorithms that are, for instance, shaping how search works, shaping what's promoted or not promoted on social media platforms and the like. So a second focus area of the project I'm developing is responding to that kind of algorithmic gatekeeping, and a special focus of that aspect of the project is providing tools and resources to especially online newsrooms that have been subject to online forms of gatekeeping like shadow banning, demonetization, and so forth. So what I'm going to do in the remaining time is maybe show you very quickly one of each of those areas. So for algorithmic accountability, I have sections. The resource will offer guidance on relevant questions for journalists to ask, newsworthy sources that they could turn to, and also how frames might shape the kinds of stories that news outlets report. And so in the idea of producing frames that are not just engaging, but also informative, of a series of kind of points of advice, each backed up with kind of brief accounts of other reports or other case studies that support that advice. So avoiding characterizing algorithms as inscrutable black boxes, of being wary of anthropomorphizing AI systems. And one that a project-censored colleague of mine, Shaylee Voidel, and I developed in some detail for one of our blog posts for the RJI project, avoiding so-called horse race style coverage of competing tech companies' tech developments. And we look at horse race coverage, for instance, of election campaigns and show how we often see the same kind of pitfalls developing in news coverage of AI tech developments that where it's not reported as a horse race, but as a kind of arms race, like who's ahead by how much, who's gaining, and who's got the power, right? And that kind of reporting is, I think, easy to do. It may be engaging for audiences, but it's not necessarily informative. So we have a host, kind of a half dozen recommendations there about how that works. Let's jump over quickly because there's a lot to cover today, not just in this project, but others. On the algorithmic gatekeeping side, the resource I'm developing has a whole section on how to conduct what we call a do-it-yourself, a DIY algorithm audit. This is one way of picking apart that idea that, for instance, search, online search is a kind of black box. You can, we have a 6-step guide to how to conduct an algorithm audit. Each of these steps breaks down in more detail. And the idea is that you can use algorithm audits as a way of indirectly understanding whether or how, for instance, the algorithm that determines the prominence of videos on YouTube is whether it's got bias built into it or not. So that's a thing. Let's see, I should stop soon. The website also has a section of additional resources, and one of my favorites from there is what I want to leave people with for now. I'll put this link in the chat in a moment. Again, I'm not so good at talking and typing at the same time, multitasking. But one of my favorite resources in the additional resources section is from a European organization called Algorithm Watch, which they created an interactive online game that you can play for free called Can You Break the Algorithm, where you get to take on the role of an investigative journalist charged with determining whether there's a very clever, cute name for the platform. It's a fictional platform. It sounds like a mashup of YouTube um, and Instagram or something like that. And your job as this imaginary investigative reporter is to determine whether this platform is making teenagers sad or not. And along the way, it's an entertaining game, but you're actually learning a tremendous amount in the course of a 10 or 12-minute game about how investigative reporting around algorithmic technology works or doesn't work. So I'll put that link in the chat in a moment, and I think I'll leave it with there. I'll be eager to hear questions when we get to the Q&A section part of the session today. And it's also the case that I think this is true for all the projects you're going to learn about today. We're currently in our beta testing mode, anticipating that March launch. And so any kind of feedback, constructive feedback on my project or my fellows' projects, we'll figure out ways to get you in touch with us, and you can provide us feedback that may be consequential for how the resource that you're getting a sneak peek of today develops before it's final and official in March. So thanks so much. And at this point, I think we didn't really plan this out in advance, but Aura, shall I turn the thing over to you?
Sure, sounds good. Thanks so much, Andy. I'm really excited to see the launch of your vinyl project, and thank you, Loretta, for having us today. Yeah, it's really great to be here and to get to share the current status of our fellowship projects. So I'm excited to talk about it in the style of Sean Connery, apparently. So I'm going to go ahead and I guess I'll give just a brief intro of my project and then go ahead and share my screen. But my name is Aura, and my focus is data sonification, which is simply put the practice of turning data into sound. And so I know that sounds a bit abstract and odd to some people who haven't encountered it, but just as we can convert data to visual representation, we can also represent it in the form of audio. And so far, various publications have done this over the past handful of years. But it's kind of been scattered instances of that. So that's something that I think has a lot of potential in journalism, which is already so greatly based in audio, whether we listen to podcasts now or the radio, or even just digital formats of consuming media content. There's a lot of room for audiovisual representations of data and telling stories driven by data. So my goal is to create a toolkit that will basically centralize the wide array of sort of scattered sonification tools and resources and documentation that are out there on the internet and available, but maybe difficult to navigate. And another goal is to really make sonification less intimidating, or just a little less, I guess, yeah, less daunting, less intimidating, and remove the mystery of it. Make it something that's definitely feasible for anyone. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And as Andy mentioned, we are definitely in our beta testing phase, so just keep that in mind. My toolkit is definitely in progress. So I'm gonna go ahead and share. And maybe I can get a thumbs up from my fellow presenters that you can see my screen. Awesome. So this is the current status of the toolkit. It's designed to be navigated non-linearly. So the idea is you can jump to any particular section that you are interested in or need reference to, but you can also navigate it chronologically. On the side panel here are essentially the chapters of the toolkit. So yeah, beyond this welcome screen describing what the toolkit really is, we jump right into the concepts of data sonification. So jumping into what even is data sonification, and jumping to some examples right away and going into a bit about the broader category that sonification falls under, which is auditory display. Basically just representing information in the form of sound. Some benefits of using sonification, why you should even bother trying it, especially as a journalist, and going to be adding potential ways you can apply it in your work, breaking down basically what you take from the data and how it can be represented in the form of sound. So talking about the way we map, the data set that we're working with to audio characteristics, and then talking about how valuable it is to integrate design and really thinking about customizing your sonification in the form of a story, not just spitting out the output from a tool, but really thinking about how you're presenting this audio, and ways to do that, and examples and documentation here. And then really thinking about, sorry, I'm going through this a bit quickly, but it's just giving a brief overview of what's in here. And then the idea of training the listener, for example. So this idea of not just playing a data-driven piece of music or audio snippet and having it sound cool, but really playing something and giving context so that the listener actually knows what to expect and can walk away from the experience kind of having learned something or having a message or having created some association that's really valuable. So talking about that here, and then providing examples as well of like times that that's been done particularly well. So beyond this concepts section, I then jump to the methods section. So there's quite a few ways that you can approach sonification. The most common one used in, I guess, especially the field of journalism is parameter mapping. And that's basically translating numeric values in your data. It doesn't necessarily need to be numeric, but values in your data over to audio parameters such as pitch, volume, etc. So explaining that, giving some examples, and I then go into explaining these different formats, these different techniques as well. And that's something that, yeah, the user can explore depending on what technique they want to use. And then this section is all about tools. They'll be categorized by skill level and platform. And there's with each tool rather, there's a description, a link, how it can be exported, where it lives, and documentation links and everything. So that'll be all categorized. And also audio editing tools that you can use after perhaps you use one of these online sonification tools and then you want to customize it using an audio editing tool. So listing all that here with links and details and descriptions. Then the audio editing phase, which is really about adding context and customizing your sonification. So laying out a potential workflow that you can follow when you're creating a sonification project. These are ways you can do that. This section is a trove of resources, just a conglomeration of the resources that are out there, and it's categorized in the following ways. Documentation, so this is going to be either papers or guides or a full-on handbooks in the form of PDFs, things that have been published that are really useful to read up on, and articles that have been published about sonification, which provide a lot of insight, inspiration. I'm going to be adding a lot of tutorials that you can follow, whether that be a broad tutorial or something very tool specific that you can follow along with as a tutorial. Some data resources to get inspiration, and then an array of presentations, podcasts, conversations, or like webinars, and then online events that have happened. So slowly adding more to these resources, but they'll all be organized in this way. And then we'll have a table of examples, still working on this, but just want to provide as many examples as I can to data sonification projects and ways it's been shared in the context of journalism, and also providing links to other archives that exist, laying out a roadmap for how you could create your own sonification and just breaking down these steps. This will include a bit more here. It's a bit sparse at the moment, but just breaking down the project workflow that you could follow. We're going to have a set of quick exercises that users can follow or try out themselves, and an opportunity to share the output of those projects that they try, but going to be having different pages dedicated to these quick exercises. They'll each showcase a different collaborator, like a sonification collaborator in the community, as well as a different data topic and tool or method. And then beyond this, I'm going to have opportunities for people to connect with existing communities in sonification. There's a really strong community called the Decibels community. There's also ICAD, which has an annual conference, as well as other organizations that are really great to get involved with if you're interested in sonification, as well as conferences and opportunities out there for sonification enthusiasts. And beyond that, more about this fellowship, published articles from me about sonification, and then ways to contact the editor/author of this toolkit, and ways to contribute or suggest feedback. And then I'm also in development is a way for people to maybe share their project. If they use this toolkit, a way to submit it and have it featured in some way, which I'm still thinking about. So again, this is, in development, but before I go on for too long, I'll be sharing the link for this demo version, the beta version, and then also the link for this feedback form, which I would really, really love your feedback if you'd be willing to share. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and yeah, I appreciate your time and interest. Zoli and Dana.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. Really great to hear from Andy and Aura. So hopefully we can end on a strong note here. Zoli, can you share your screen so it's not both of us?
Absolutely.
I just struggle through this.
Yeah. Absolutely. All
So-
right.
Okay.
That's sorry. That's
Go to present or present slideshow.
yes. We put together like a brief presentation that sort
Put it
of
in.
might
Can you put it in
helps.
present mode?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. um, so in recent years, there has been a shift towards just really seeing a lot of content flooding in are basically all the information channels that users and audiences can usually get their sort of like content consumption at. And the advent of AI generated content isn't like a great help in that regard. And for that reason, it has been really untenable not to recognize. So given this, there has been an increased level of competition for the attention and time of readers. And even though there have been many sort of like attempts and apps geared towards compensating the content producer, we haven't seen as much activity when it comes to compensating the readers or audiences for their time and effort. So that's actually our biggest value, or the value that we feel strongly about being able to offer to the online community, that our tool, Dig In There, really tries to fill this void in a way. The way it works is that it makes it possible for newsrooms to create quizzes for their articles and content more generally, and which then the audience members can take. And by taking the comprehension quizzes on the content, they'll have a verified way of sort of like assuring, giving it like a degree of assurance to the publisher that they have in fact read and understood the content, underlying content. And this pops open a host of opportunities to create value between the news producers and the news consumers. And just to give you a sort of like an idea as to how it could facilitate a transfer of value between the two of them, is that by taking the quiz and passing the quiz, say a newsroom can reward certain perks to the most engaged of their audience members. This way, acknowledging their effort and even spurred them on, like reading their materials more. And the underlying core concept of it all is that we're offering with this comprehension quiz a verification-based metric that really gives a measure of the intensity and depth of engagement on a piece of content. And we make sure that it's privacy-minded so that users can stay anonymous, and it's also bot resistant to sort of like forestall the wave of expected just AI-enabled bots trying to wreak havoc on like in any other system, on our system. So this metric makes it possible to, the metric rather, but the actual quiz mechanism to make the reading or content consumption experience more of a more akin to a game, and have it more have the experience stick more with the audience, if you will. And we're doing all this with a great priority in mind, that we should have newsrooms in as much control as is possible. And one of the ways we'll do that is letting publishers run their quizzes on our site, but otherwise they will retain all the traffic to their sites, because the content itself will live on at their site. So no traffic is getting siphoned off of their viewership or readership. And we're making sure that it's the whole tool is easy to adopt, and is as little a pain as possible. So most of the processes are automized or fully automized even. The sort of like a main concept or goal of ours is to take the main revenue models that newsrooms use to support themselves and sort of try to give a leg up in each. So let's just take the subscription model. So if a news site uses a subscription model, then an added sort of value in the form of a playful quiz where the user stands a chance of earning a perk, like a merch or like an event to a ticket, a meeting with the author, and so on. This could, a value like that could sway the reader to become a subscriber, to the site. And yeah, so would you like to finish up the rest, Dana?
Yeah, I'll jump in. One thing I want to note about the partnership between me and Zoli is that I run a nonprofit newsroom, and we thought really intentionally about how different revenue models would impact how those newsrooms would maybe leverage the power of this tool. So definitely from a paywall and subscription standpoint, you know, if you have a quiz attached to a story that's behind a paywall after you've gotten so many free views, it could be a way to encourage people to subscribe. Thinking about people or thinking about newsrooms that are more advertising supported, quiz takers will spend more time on your site, which means that you increase the value of advertising space and you can offer higher ad rates. So some of our A/B testing with our beta newsrooms, of which we have about 5 or 6 right now, from different geographic and demographic spaces, is to try and A/B test whether that quiz taking is actually leading through a higher click-through rate on ads, or if it has a lower bounce rate. And then membership, which is what my nonprofit newsroom is, and where we're kind of highlighting this particular program, in addition to the beta test newsrooms, is really working more toward loyalty and working more toward trust. So strengthening that bond between newsrooms and their audience, showing them that, oh, okay, if you consume our content in a meaningful way, if you really are taking away like the main points and really the purpose behind why it was important for us to report this for your community, we want to reward you for that. And not only that, we want to be in conversation with you. We want to be in community with you. And we hope that you'll become a part of our community too. Now, whether that translates to necessarily someone becoming a paid member, has to be seen. But we are hoping that one of the aspects of taking the quiz, which is successfully completing, however many quizzes or as part of this gamified experience, and we leave that up to the publisher, like whatever benchmark you want quiz takers to meet, allows you an invitation into a private community of other people who are just as invested as you are. Because they've successfully completed X number of quizzes or, spent X number of, have X number of points in this kind of gamified experience. So you're in conversation with people who have some of the same values, who are maybe more mission aligned, as opposed to just the Wild West of the comment section on most sites where you can get anybody saying anything, and it can become, especially for newsrooms that are small and understaffed, can become a moderation headache. You're just trying to protect your general audience from people who are, hateful or vitriolic. By having a private community, we're experimenting with Discord right now as a potential platform for that private community, but some of our beta test newsrooms have expressed interest in some other technologies that's better suited to kind of their demographic. So like one beta test newsroom, it has told me that, hey, we have some Facebook groups already, and our audience skews pretty boomer. It's a rural Midwest paper, and they're like, that we're very like face-to-face, very, very analog. It's like, if you want to get people, you go to Facebook. You're not going to like TikTok. So trying to, meet people where they're at in order for them, really the goal of digging there is not only to engage people with the content, but it's to turn them from readers into doers. So hopefully the things that they glean from the content that they're consuming makes them want to, talk to other people about it and share experiences. Are you experiencing the same problem that I'm experiencing? Are you noticing the same issues that I'm noticing? And coming together in community to say, well, maybe we can do something about this, or maybe contacting us and saying, hey, we're doing something. Can you cover this? Or can you put us in connection with people who can do something about this? Or can you investigate this? So trying to not only build that trust and loyalty, but that connection between us and them, so that we break down the silos of that us and them. Zoe, will you go to the next screen for me?
Yes.
You were on that one.
Aren't anymore. Yes, I'm on it.
I have too many screens up right now.
It has to do with different use cases that the quizzes, comprehension quizzes facilitate. So
I have about 700 tabs open right now, so I'm trying to navigate.
Same here. No worries.
So some of the use cases that we've talked through, especially on the editorial side, with some of the newsrooms that we've met with so far, who have agreed to test this out in the wild for us as we come up on that March deadline. And as we kind of think about, okay, well, if you're using it this way and you're coming up against this, like, how can we tweak it? But these are the main things that we have come up with kind of on the front end, but we're looking to see what that looks like in practice for some of them. So obviously we've mentioned perks before. So the main one people have been interested in is, what merch can I get? Can I get a sticker? Everybody's obsessed with tote bags. Can I get a mug? Gotta have that hoodie. But maybe for your community, it's more like an event ticket, or maybe it's some sort of like community roundtable or panel, like exclusive access to that, or advanced access to that. But it can motivate readers to, want to consume that content. It's like, I want that thing, I want to pick that thing, and then I want to earn that thing. Again, talking about community, inviting successful quiz takers to join this private community to talk about this content. And it's balancing very delicate lines between free speech and hate speech. So allowing people a space where they can say what they want, but because they're already pretty mission and value aligned, there's a lesser chance that they're going to say something that's completely off the rails or that is hateful or discriminatory toward others. Doesn't mean that it can't necessarily happen, but it lessens that that moderation, like not commitment, but that moderation, like intensity that you might have if it's that Wild West. It also helps readers build up this portfolio of like verified expertise on their own community. Like they know, what's going on because they've been consuming this content. Maybe that means they're up on what's happening with city council and what is being presented before them and how that might impact their community, whether it's a bond or whether it's a new rule or guideline that's being proposed. They're on it, and they know that because X and Y and Z have happened, well, this is what they can do about it, or this is how they can respond to it. In terms of insights, because it's verification based, it means that we can really look at insights that give us a window into what meaningful engagement can do, like incorporating that into analytics that we already have access to and things that we already do, like click-through rates, bounce rates, like time on screen. But how do we really capture whether you can scroll through it and you got to the end of the page, but did you really like pick up anything along the way? We live in a society of skimmers, and it's like, scroll, 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 swipe right, swipe left, swipe up. Like, did you get anything out of it? We treat news sometimes like social media, and we know that about half of Americans get information and news information from social media. So it's no surprise that they treat it like that as well. And the last thing that I want to touch on is innovation. This is really an experimental way of looking at how to measure how people engage with news information. There are other quiz applications out there, but what sets ours apart is how we have trained, well, Zoli has trained because he's the software engineer, our LLM to analyze the content to create bot-resistant, more nuanced questions around the content. It's not fact recall. It's not like, what color jacket did this person have on? What position does this person hold in Congress? It's more nuanced. So if you didn't read it, it would be much, much more difficult for you to answer the question. Not impossible. Not to say that you can't just have somebody who's a really good guesser, but the bot resistance was really important to us. So somebody's not racking up perks and they're not really doing anything. It's a computer program. But the nuance behind the questions, the intention is really to get people to pay more attention, to like really think about, okay, well, is it both A and B or is it all of them? You actually have to read through things. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss something. Maybe it's none of these, we might throw something in there to throw you off. So it's really an attempt, and our hope is to create more meaningful news consumers in a world where a lot of people are news avoidant because it's depressing, it's sad, it's full of things that we don't want to face as a society. We're hoping that, news may not always be, fluffy and sunshiny, but it is important to stay informed about your community. If you're not participating as part of the process, sometimes that means you can be part of the problem. So hopefully this is one way to push people to like help balance that scale out, and we have more engaged and active community members. So if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us at info@diginthare.com. And we actually have some demo sessions on Zoom scheduled to start. I don't know what date this is going up, but on Thursday, the 23rd, and then we have them into next week. So I can provide that link where people can sign up if they would like. It's open to anyone.
Yes, absolutely. Please do. Please throw that in the chat function. And then all of the information that was thrown in the chat function throughout today's conversation will also be posted with this recorded webinar session. First off, just thank you so much, all of you, for participating and taking the time out of your busy schedules to speak with us today. That was just absolutely amazing. I'm so interested in seeing how far these projects go, and just seeing the work that you guys have already amassed at this point. It's absolutely phenomenal. We don't have a lot of online participation right now, which pretty expected, I would say, after the holiday. It's pretty common. But that being the case, we do expect that there will be a lot of questions, answers later. So definitely that information that you provided, contact information, feedback forms, anything that you would like individuals to know, just put it in the chat function or send me an email at a later time and I'll be able to help our viewers get in touch. My information will be accessible as well. I wanted to first off offer the other fellows, since maybe this is the first time you're getting the full presentation from your fellows, if you have any questions from your peers. Maybe if we have any questions for Dana or Zoe first, anyone?
Sorry, I have a question for Andy off the top of my head. So,
Okay.
given that the algorithm and AI scene in particular, how rapidly evolving they are, have you perhaps considered opening up the project after you publish it to the public in the form of either like a wiki or some other type of public participation, so everyone could have a chance? Experts of their fields to sort of like chip in with their ideas as to what to pay attention to and how the field is evolving around these issues that you're discussing.
Yeah, wow, Zali, like always, your suggestions are always so good. So thank you. No, I haven't thought about that, but I will now because of your suggestion. And that's what you've suggested is very much in the spirit with the organization I work for, which is a small nonprofit called Project Censored, where our primary mission is doing public education around media literacy and the importance of independent journalism. So that kind of the idea of kind of opening that up in multiple ways, both to more input from people who have expertise in the area, but also opening it up to be accessible to people outside of the kind of field, the profession of journalism, is really appealing to me and very much in line with the project's mission. Yeah, that's super. Thank you.
Your website resembles, the website's name resembles that of a professional organization anyway, so it's
Well,
only fair to.
Thank you. I'll give a shout out to, I can't take any credit for the appearance of the website. That's the great work of colleagues of mine, Kate Horgan and Adam Armstrong, who have worked a lot to make the website much more clean than it would be and functional than it would be if I was responsible for that aspect of it. Yeah.
Great going.
Maybe Aura, I'll ask you if I could about your project. I love the roadmap feature of your project, and I wonder if you could say a little more about what made you develop that and how it would work for people who want to use it. Because whenever I see the development of your project, that component always leaps out at me as a really cool one that I wish I could go back on my project. I don't think I have the time and energy now to do it, but I wish I could go back and create a roadmap feature for my project. So what about in yours? How did that come about and and how does it work for users?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. It's good feedback to know that that stands out. I've gotten feedback that maybe that needs to be bumped up a little bit. I put it towards the end because I feel like the context beforehand is maybe required to know the steps. But honestly, the roadmap idea, similar guides have been developed. So for example, the decibels community, which I mentioned when I was going over the community section of the toolkit, they've published a really great guide for sort of how you could navigate a sonification project. So thinking about choosing your data, how you want to tell the story around your data in the form of sound, what method you're using, and kind of some options in that way. So I really want to give credit to that community. Two sonification practitioners that are really involved and active are Duncan Gear and Miriam Quick. They've done a lot of work in sonification and have a sonification podcast, actually. So really want to reference their work. Their podcast is called Loud Numbers. And Yeah, that I would say resources from the Decibels community and those two former journalists slash information designers are really great reference points. So I've definitely just feel inspired by the documentation that has been put out there, but kind of breaking it down into this simplified workflow in a way and just thinking about what are the steps. This is a lot of information. If I want to try and make a sonification, what do I need to consider? But ultimately, it's like each workflow could be unique. So I don't want it to be overly strict as well. There's a lot of flexibility in there too. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Thanks for asking.
Could I'll just jump in and add something I should have said at the start. All these resources, when they launch in early March, will be available to newsrooms and working journalists and news workers free of charge. That's one of the fundamental conditions that everyone who becomes an RJI fellow agrees to. That we're developing what we hope are innovative, cutting-edge tools. But the whole point of the fellowship and the RJI support is that they aren't behind a paywall. They're available for people to use, and we want to, every one of us here and every fellow and however many years, almost 24 years of RJI fellows, we all want to see our tools out there being used. And so they are available free of charge for people who want to use them.
Fabulous. You took the question right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you what the price point looks like, but
Yeah,
that's
right.
the
Well,
best nugget of it.
Thanks to that support, we're all in the position of being able to offer these resources at no charge. I don't like saying for free because that's like they aren't free. We've worked really hard, and our fellows have worked really hard. But through the support of the Reynolds Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri, we're able to offer them at no charge. I don't know how we are on time, but Dana and Zoli, I love that your project is all about loyalty and trust. And that to me is like the keystone here. If we're talking about rebuilding faith in journalism at a kind of fateful juncture in the profession's history, that seems to me such an important thing. And I wonder, what's interesting to me, and maybe you want to react to this, is although my project is in many ways, it starts from a skeptical position about the role of technology in reshaping the field. Your project seems to start from a premise that we can harness that technology in order to enhance loyalty and trust. I don't know if you want to react to that at all. And then I recognize we probably are almost out of time.
I mean, speaking as a publisher, I've seen firsthand the erosion of trust in journalists and journalism. So yes, I don't think that the intersection of tech and journalism is necessarily a bad thing. One doesn't have to be, overpower the other, and one isn't necessarily more important than the other. One can be leveraged to improve the other and vice versa. So I really think our project is an example of hopefully where we head in journalism in terms of this symbiotic rather than parasitic relationship between these two things. So maybe it'll make people a little bit more hopeful about journalists and journalism.
Yeah, tech and journalism is like a kitchen knife, like so many other things in life, and we're out there to make a great meal with ours. So that's our sort of like motto. And I mean, going back to a little bit more serious point is that we're trying to make with our approach kind of sweeten the deal of like engaging with the material more and investing the time and effort in the sometimes laborious way of making through like a long form article or like a longer, like more context heavy video and engaging with that way. And as a side effect on the long run, our hope is that it will instill like a degree of loyalty that would have been difficult to attain otherwise. Yeah, it's our approach.
Well, I just want to say wonderfully well put. I'm just very excited to see the application of all of these tools and resources out in the industry and in the field, hopefully for years to come. I'm especially just wanted to give you guys kind of a special shout out all for taking the time out of your day and hours all over the world to make this possible today. We really, really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to see where everyone's projects go. Definitely keep me updated as you guys approach that presentation date. Besides that, I am going to go ahead and stop the recording now just because we are at that time.